Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining me. We're got about 5 minutes before we get started, so giving people some time to hop on. If you have not been on a Zoom webinar, it's a little bit different than your normal Zoom. It's kind of designed to be more of a one-way, so it could kind of present information, but still have your hands that you can raise up and have a Q&A that you could submit questions. And then if you raise your hand, I have the ability to unmute you, but it only lets one person talk at a time. I discovered that in the last Zoom that I did. So, so it's a little bit different, but pretty much still the same. And if I'm looking a little bit different, that's because I just don't have any hair on my head. Actually, I just have one more chemo treatment to go, and then it will all be done. So I'm super excited, though, to be here with you guys. And I just actually did a version of this for Empower Fitness just a little bit earlier today, and they thought it was really helpful. So I'm hoping that it's going to be the same for everybody here as well. So let me check my watch here, my clock. All right, we're getting closer and closer. So this is actually being recorded. And so you put in your email, you will actually get a link, an email with a link to the recording. And I also learned in the last workshop I did that you can share that link with other people. So if you have people that you feel like could benefit from learning what we're going to talk about today, then this way you can just share that link with them and they can watch it. I mean, it's not going to be, of course, the same as being here live, but actually still give them the same tools that they need. So, and I'm glad it's not a beautiful day and everybody's outside playing hooky on me. So, all right, let me check and see. Oh, we got a, oh, hello. So I got a hi in the question and answer box, and we don't have a chat. It doesn't have a chat part with this, but we definitely have the question and answer box. So, oh, hold on here a minute. I just did something. So hopefully you guys aren't, oh, I don't know. So anyways, so let's see. All right. We are heading close to the hour. It's great. We got nine people on the line with us, and I'm so glad that you asked Janet for the phone number so that you could listen in on this. What I will do is, because let's see if there's anybody else listening in by phone. What I'll do is I will make sure that Janet gets the link for this recording so that she could send it out to everyone. So if you're listening by phone, you don't have to miss out on seeing the fun slides that I have prepared for everybody. So, all right. It is 3 o'clock, so welcome. I'm so excited to be here with you guys. Just to make sure you're in the right place, we are actually here in How to Tame Your COVID Stress Monster. So you just want to make sure you got your volume turned up. And again, this is going to be recorded. So had somebody said they took 2 pages of notes in the last one, but my encouragement is you're going to get this recording so you could take your notes then. I really want you just to be here and be present with me so that you can just get the most out of this. And then, I mean, if you got to take notes, that's okay, but you will get the recording. So with that in mind, I just want to do a poll. And the other thing I love about Zoom, oh, hold on a second. We accidentally went past the poll. I'm going to launch a poll here. And the poll is this. I want to know what your level of stress is. All right. So If you can pick one of those, all the way from a 10 all the way up to 100. I don't have 0 because if it was 0, guess what? I don't know if you'd be here on this webinar with me if it was completely at 0. So take about another 5-10 seconds, and then we'll close out our voting and see. And know that this adjusts and shifts around. So, but it's a great way for you to check in with yourself and knowing what is my stress level today. And what I used to have my patients do in the hospital is just go from 1 to 100. Where were they? So that they could have a quick check there. So I'm going to end the polling, and I am going to share the results. And you can see that, oh, all right. So we kind of a little bit more above 50. So that's good. Good thing you guys are all here with me. And I promise that I'm going to give you the tools to be able to actually bring those levels down. So with that in mind, just going to talk about things we're going to cover. So we're going to take a look at how stress may be impacting you right now. Also, why stress management won't work. You're going to learn the 3 steps that you need to take in order to succeed at taking control of the stress monster. And the last thing is I'm going to explain to you how 60-second solutions work. So are you ready? I hope so. Great. So this is one of my favorite quotes, and it's by Henry Ford. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And I want to give you an example of this quote in action. So, how many people know of Yosemite National Park, which is located in California? And here is Yosemite Valley. Well, turns out I grew up right outside the southern gate to Yosemite National Park. And 10 years ago, I went back on vacation, and I decided that I was going to climb Half Dome. Now, I did it because I had a girlfriend here in New Jersey who had done it. And I wasn't about to let a Jersey girl show me up because I grew up from there and I had never done it. So I invited my nieces and my brother to join me. So we started out in the parking lot at 6 o'clock in the morning. And by the time we got around to the climb, which was in the back, it was 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And the climb involves pulling yourself up these cables up the backside, all right? And what had happened was earlier in the day, my brother and I got separated from my 2 nieces because they were 20 years younger than us, so they moved faster. And my brother and I got here, and I saw my niece's pink shirt up there, and I turned and looked at my brother and I said, you know what? I said, I really wanted to go to the top, but I'm really proud of our accomplishment because, you know, just getting to this point was, you know, an accomplishment. And he said, yeah, I'm with you. We could just stay here and wait until they come down. We were thinking we can't. Well, guess what? Turns out it wasn't my nieces. They somehow were behind us. And I don't know, maybe they slept a few hours on this side. I really don't know. But they kind of came along behind us. It was like, come on, Aunt Carol and Uncle Tony. Oh, it's going to be so cool, you know. And people were coming down off of there saying, oh my God, it's so amazing. That got us thinking we can, and we actually did. And here is the view from the top. So this is looking the opposite direction of the postcard. And it's not my brother out there. This is my brother when he got back down to the bottom. But the reason I love sharing this is because the only thing that changed was whether we thought we can or we can't. And I want to encourage you, instead of thinking that you can't do something, start thinking that you can do something, because that's the only thing that's going to hold you back. All right. So before we go any further, some of you watching have been to some of my workshops with NAMI. So you've been in other things that I've done. Some of you don't know me. So I just want to spend a few seconds why you might want to listen to what I'm going to share with you today and how you can trust that what I'm going to tell you is actually worth listening to. I've been teaching stress management in hospital settings since 1991. And over the course of those years, I've taught thousands of people how to take control of stress using stressometry. And you all are going to get to learn stressometry today. I've actually been a featured stress expert in a number of different media magazines. And I've written a few books over the last, I was looking it up, 2008 was the first book that I wrote. And it got to do some amazing training with some great organizations. But the reason I really want you, the most important reason I want you to listen to what I have to say is because I live what I teach. I'm not going to share anything with you all today that I don't actually put into practice in my own life. Now, that wasn't always the case. When I started working at Capitol Health almost 18 years ago, I was teaching, but I wasn't putting into practice. And I didn't even know that the stress monster had me until I landed in my doctor's office 3 weeks in a row with migraines. And finally, on the third week, he said to me, Carol, what's got you so stressed? And here I was thinking I was doing a good job of managing my stress, and I was outside of work. Now, the thing is, I loved my job. I couldn't believe I got paid to do my job, is how much I loved it. But that didn't mean that it wasn't stressful. And so what I realized is that I wasn't going to change jobs, but that I needed to change. And so I started kind of putting into practice, doing these short little 60-second sort of tools. And that was how I discovered that 60 seconds is actually doable, that actually does something. And I'm proud to say that I made a promise then, and ever since I live what I teach and I teach what I live. So everything that we talk about here today is I put into practice on a daily basis in my life. Now, my life changed dramatically in October of 2019, just this past October. I was actually diagnosed with endometrial cancer. And so that led to surgery the next month, which then led to actually having to do more treatment because they found it kind of spread. So right now I'm doing chemo. We picked this date because it's the week before my chemo, and so I have tons of energy to be able to do this. But I had to use all of my tools, and I had to create some new ones. And the new ones that I created are pretty relevant to what's going on, because one of the things that would happen to me is I started to get lost in what if alley, and you could be sitting at home with this whole, virus thing and thinking about, well, what if this, or what if that, or what if this doesn't happen, or what if that doesn't happen? And quite honestly, you can get lost in it. And so the tools, I think, are pretty applicable to today's time as they are with any kind of time, but particularly for me, in facing a kind of a life-threatening situation. So the first one was what I call the now stone. And I went out in my yard because I have some river stones, and I picked out a stone and I asked a girlfriend of mine to engrave the word now on there. Now, here's how I used it. I kept it in my pocket. It was always on me. So it was either my coat pocket or my pants pocket. But the most important part is what now stands for, and that is to notice only what is. In other words, I used it as an anchor to staying in the present moment. Be in the now, right? If I I catch myself going down what if alley, all I had to do was reach in my pocket, touch that stone, and immediately I was back here in the moment. And then I don't have it to show you all because I actually passed it along to somebody that was going for a 5-year PET scan. She was stage 4 melanoma, and she was kind of getting lost in what if alley. And so I told her, I said, here, you need this now. And she ended up using it. And good thing, because the PET scan came back showing that she was still all clear even at 5 years. So a little good news there. But the other tool I used was I would catch myself with if alley, and I would just say to myself out loud, feel your feet. Because the split second you say this to yourself, guess where your attention goes? not to what if alley, but it comes right here and you feel your feet, which again, kind of brings you back to the present moment. And so those were a couple new tools that I actually had to come up with. And then you're going to learn the rest of them as we kind of go along here, which are the old tools. So life before coronavirus, well, quite honestly, on a global kind of scale, stress was at epidemic levels, all right? And it means that stress was a huge problem before even this virus showed up. But if you think about it, since then, for some people, it's become an even bigger problem. Although I did meet one woman on my last workshop who said, you know what, Carol, I'm just looking at it as like it's a vacation. And I said, well, then now to keep your stress pretty low. But anyways, my most important question is I want to ask is, how is stress impacting you? All right. Do any of these sound familiar? So when it comes to your sleep, are you so stressed out that you can't sleep, or you find yourself waking up in the middle of the night and not being able to go back to sleep? Or maybe your stress is spilling out on the wrong people. Maybe your stress is causing the littlest things to start getting to you. Or lastly, is your stress starting to take a toll, and are you having health issues that's coming up? Now, what's really important to know when it comes to our health is that stress kind of is a double whammy. One, it literally has the power to make us sick, all right? I once worked at a mental health agency, and I had a couple coworkers, women who were having a lot of GI problems and were having a lot of medical tests. And all the medical tests came back saying everything was okay, but they were still having these incredible problems. Well, guess what happened? As soon as each one of them left that job, guess what happened to the problems? They cleared up. So stress can make us sick, or it can take something that you're already living with and actually end up making it bigger. So for me, one of the things I've been mindful of is I'm a person living with major depression. And so that's one of the things I've been keeping a particular eye on, during, quite honestly, this whole cancer journey. See, I feel like the world caught up to how I've been living my life, right, since, the end of December. And so it can take what's there and make it even bigger, like magnify it. And that's what was happening with the migraines. So if you say a yes to any of those, it is a sure sign that stress is taking control of your life. And what I want to do is I want to launch, let's see if I can launch this poll now. I want to go to this poll, and what I want you to do, if you have the ability, is I want you to pick out which you see is the number one way that stress is impacting you the most. Is it messing up with your sleep? Is it spilling over to people? And you'll see the two on there I didn't have slides for, but do you notice it like with me with your mental health? Or is it other health issues that you're having? And if you can, just put your vote in there and we'll go for another, 5 seconds, give people a chance. All right, we just about 3/4 of people have voted, and I'll give you 5 more seconds. All right, so I'm going to end it and just share these results with you. So you can see that, wow. All right, so sleep and mental health are definitely at the top, but I got to tell you, irritability is close by, and then health. So, all right, well, it's a good thing that you're on this with me, because we are going to walk away with some tools that you can do something about that. And by the way, I may not have mentioned this, but if there's any questions that come up along the way, there's 2 things you can do. One, pop them in the Q&A, all right? because at the end, I'm going to take a look at all the questions. And if there's something that really can't wait and you need to ask me right now, you can always raise your hand. And what I will do is unmute you so you could let me know what it is that you needed to ask, okay? All right. So that brings us to, I bet all of you have been trying to do things to manage and to keep your stress levels low, right? And yet you're still getting affected in the way that we just saw. And it might not matter what you're doing, that it still doesn't seem to be working. And here's the reason why. Because what we've been taught all along about stress management has been wrong. All right, let me explain. When I would get my migraines, all right, I would start getting stressed out at work at 10 o'clock in the morning. And what stress management had me doing was it had me going to the gym after work, right, at 6 o'clock at night. Or even better, if I could go get a massage. The problem, though, with stress management was I never got there because my migraine would end up hitting me at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and I would have to leave work. So stress management, didn't work because it wasn't enough. And this is what I discovered, that when it comes to stress, it's kind of like a coin, right? There are two sides to it, and we have to address both sides. The first side is prevention, which I think of as stress management. The other side is the intervention. So prevention is stress management, and those are all the things that we've learned. They're important, but they won't work by themselves. We actually have to also use the intervention piece, which is stressometry. All right. Now, you might be wondering and asking yourself, so what is this stressometry, Carol? Well, it's really simple. It's when I would get stressed out at 10 o'clock in the morning, being able to do something right then, to take action right then to reduce the stress so that it didn't end up building up and I have to get the migraine before 2 o'clock. So here's what I did instead, all right? See, 10 o'clock, what I would do instead was I'd listen to some calming music for 60 seconds in my office, and then I used my heavy bag. Now, here's the funny part. I told my boss that I bought this heavy bag for the patients, but the truth was it was for me. I just wanted it in my office so I could have it, all right? But I did each of these, and guess what? I was able to avoid the migraine because, and you're going to learn how this system works a little bit later, but because I was able to take action to bring the stress down and rather than it just building up and imploding. So that's kind of how stressometry works. And we'll talk about it a little bit more so that you get a better understanding of how you can sort of implement it in your own life, all right? So if there's any questions about that section, you can go ahead, put them into Q&A. I don't want you to get to the end and forget anything. But that means we're going to move on to the next section, which is the 3 steps that you got to take in order to be successful in taming your stress monster, all right? Step 1 is you got to stop using the wrong tools. You got to become a stress detective. And step 3 is you got to start using the right tools. Absolutely, somebody put their question in, I'm just going to answer it. Could you take a walk? Yes. Don't have a heavy bag at home, you could definitely take a walk. So we're going to start off with step number 1. I want to ask this question. Has anybody here ever taken a knife and used it as a screwdriver, right? Well, at least when I'm doing this in a live workshop, everybody's hands kind of go up, right? And what about this? What about duct tape? How many things have you used duct tape for? These are a few of my uses, all right? And the thing about the knife and the duct tape is that they're what I call quick fixes, right? They're things that you just grab at when you need a quick fix. And the quick fixes, the problem is that they are the temporary solutions, that they're not going to work in the long term. They're really good for the short term, but guess what? If I never replace the hose on my radiator and I'm cruising down the turnpike, guess what? Chances are it could blow out on me just as easily, but better if I replaced it with the right one. And so these quick fixes, or the temporary solutions, are what I call the wrong tools, that we just grab at them. But really, if we could get the right tool to do the job, it's going to last longer. And just like we can grab at quick fixes for physical things around us, we can also grab at quick fixes for stress. And I want to share a couple examples with you. First is mine, and that is this bottle, this can of Coors Light. That this was one of my stress quick fixes, but I was only 14 years old at the time. And what had happened was I overheard a conversation and figured out that my dad was dying from cancer. Now, I grew up with one of those families where we didn't talk about things. So guess what I never did? I never told anybody what I heard. Instead, I started stealing a lot of alcohol and even took it to school. Now, you want to know the worst part? I hated the taste of alcohol, but it did its job. It helped me deal, with the fact that my dad was dying. I was lucky. Alcohol didn't stay one of my tools throughout life. But over the 30 years I've worked in behavioral health, I'll tell you what, there's a lot of people that they're in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, and this has been still the tool that they've had to use. There's one other really good example of this, though, and that is Oprah Winfrey herself, right? When Oprah, back when she had her show and many years ago, her weight would go up and down, and then up and then down, and up and then down. And the truth was that Oprah finally had success kind of just maintaining a healthy weight for her when she realized that she used food as a tool. And for her, it went back to her childhood, to the trauma that she had when she was a young girl. And so food became what I like to call her survival tool. It helped her survive that time in her life. But then, like these tools do, they go on to become more problems, all right? And there's other wrong tools that people can use. This is not an exhaustive list, all right? These are just the ones that came up off the top of my head. And the thing about caretaking, the reason that caretaking is in red is because I've worked with many people over the years who were so busy taking care of everybody else's problems that they didn't have to deal with their own, right? So it was a way of avoiding. So I want to ask, do you recognize any? Are you maybe using some of these other wrong tools to deal with your stress? Now, in moderation, they're okay, right? But you are the only one who knows if it's making more problems for you rather than helping you. And if that's the case, then you might want to think about swapping them out. But you're the only one who will know that, all right? Now, you got to be careful because you don't want to replace one wrong tool with another one. So here's an example. Know anybody that smoked and they quit smoking, right? What happened? Well, I'm going to say probably 85% of the people I know, they gained weight. And what happened is that they put down the cigarette, which was the wrong tool, but it was the tool they were using for stress. And they ended up picking up food. So instead of picking up a healthier tool, they ended up picking up just another wrong tool. All right. Now, ultimately, the wrong tools will go on to create more stress for you, which is why we want to stop using the wrong tools. That brings us to step number 2, which is to become a stress detective. So in order to do that, I gotta get my bottle. So here it is. And this is the thing I love, because unfortunately, you won't see this on the telephone, but what I'm doing is taking a little bottle of soda and actually shaking it up so that I am having the pressure build up inside. And you guys can kind of see that, right? Well, I like to say that we human beings are like a bottle of root beer, all right? That life happens and shakes us up, and the pressure starts to build up inside of us, all right? Now, the secret is on this bottle of root beer, you can actually see the foam, right? That tells you that the pressure's built up inside. We got to become a stress detective and start recognizing when that pressure is building up inside of us. And that's the whole idea of becoming a stress detective, is getting to know when your stress levels are rising, 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 building, 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 building. Because you know what happens if you get up to here and you open your mouth? It completely spills out, right? You can't take back those words. So we want to catch it before it gets up to this level. And to do that, there's some things that you want to look for, all right? One is, how is your body responding? Physical responses to stress. What are your emotional responses? So what are you feeling? And then lastly is, what's your behavioral stress responses, or what are you doing? So let me show you a couple examples of this, all right? So here you see we got all three. Physical is the things that your body does in response to feeling stress. And they're things that you can't control, you can't stop, all right? Nobody here wants to be able to stay insomnia, right? Or the tense muscles, or the headaches, or the stomach aches. You notice all very physical sorts of sensations. Whereas the emotional is going to be the feelings that you can get in there. And, you know, whether that's feeling more anxious, even feeling more depressed than what you might already be feeling. And then lastly is, what do you do? And so this is where you want to become a stress detective and get to know yourselves, all right? So that as it starts building, 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 you can do something and intervene about it a whole lot sooner. Now you'll notice that the do goes the continuum. It goes from yelling and screaming to completely the opposite, which is shutting down. And it really is, what I want you to think about is, do you tend to be more in one area? Is there one area that shows up stronger in your life? For me, I'm more the physical. I know that migraines and headaches, even little headaches, not even a migraine, but even a little headache, I know stress wants to show up more physically in my body than the other two that it tends to be there. And so this is what we're doing. We're looking. Now, I have a question for you. If this has ever happened to you, have you ever been going away on vacation and you were either catching a plane, driving, or taking a bus, or, you know, a train, and that night you went to go to bed after you got everything packed and you couldn't sleep, right? Yeah. Oh, nobody in her right mind would, you know, not sleep before knowing that you had a big trip that you had to take. And so I have a little bit of bad news, and that is this: we can't stop all of our stress responses. So we may not be able to stop that not able to sleep, but we can use the tools in order to minimize the damage. So I can use the tools in order to get 5 hours of sleep or 4 hours of sleep, which is better than no sleep at all right? So sometimes we can interrupt the process and we can stop it. The other times, all we can do is sort of minimize the damage by using the tools. So that is why you got to become a stress detective. Because remember, that pressure's building, 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 and you want to catch it before it rises up too high. Which then brings us to the third step. All right, so you gave up the wrong tools. You kind of started noticing when the stress is getting to the levels are getting higher and higher. Now you got to start using some of the right tools in order to do that. So I have a few I want to introduce you to. The first one happens to have something in common with Superman. And what will take out Superman faster than a speeding bullet? Kryptonite. Well, I want to introduce you to stress kryptonite. All right. And it is just as powerful against stress as kryptonite is to Superman. Now, here's what happens when we get stressed out. Our body has this physiologically wired response so that all of these different neurochemicals are produced in our body. One of the most damaging for our health, though, is cortisol. All right. And what happens when you use stress kryptonite, you're able to shut off this physiological response, quickly. So that's why I call it stress kryptonite, because it has the power to neutralize stress really quick. So what is stress kryptonite? Well, it is oxygen. Yep. It is the oxygen that you can get into your body, all right? So I want to ask you to do this test with me, as long as it's safe. And if you're listening on the phone, hold one hand on the phone, but then put one hand on your belly. So I want you to put one hand on your belly and one hand on your chest, all right? And again, if you're listening on the phone, more important to put the one hand, if you got it free, actually on your belly. And what I want you to do is pay attention to which hand moves when you take a breath. All right. So I want to count to 3 and then I'll say breathe. You ready? 1. Oh, hold on a second. Don't breathe yet. I got to go back. My finger slipped. Okay. You ready? 1, 2, 3, breathe. We're going to do it one more time in case you're not so sure. So just pay attention, take a breath, and notice which hand moves. You ready? 1, 2, 3, breathe. So here's the thing. If this hand moved, that will not work for stress kryptonite. And the reason is because the air that you're breathing in is staying up here in your chest. If you got your hand on your belly to move, that will work for stress kryptonite. And if you've heard about belly breathing, we've heard yoga breathing, diaphragmatic breathing. I mean, it's been called like lots of different things, but I like to call it, stress kryptonite. But the thing about it is that we want to get oxygen into our bloodstream. And the reason that we have to get the air down into the belly is because of this, that in the bottom of our lungs are all of these capillaries and all the things. And it's in the bottom of our lungs that I like to call it the loading dock, right? That you actually are getting the most oxygen into your bloodstream, which then gets the most oxygen not only to your organs, but to your brain, and so that it can begin to neutralize some of those neurochemicals. Now, of course, the opposite happens when you get anxious, right? Or you start to have a panic attack, because your breathing becomes more shallow and shallow and shallower. And that's why breathing is such an incredible tool to have if you experience anxiety or panic attacks. The picture I want to give you is this. So think of a loading dock, and this is parked at the shop, right, let's say, and they are getting off, they're going to get a lot of stuff off of that truck, right, and load it into that store. But what about if the truck is this far away from the loading dock? Not going to happen. So when we are chest breathing, we are not getting very much oxygen into our body or to our brain. And if you're belly breathing, you're actually, let me come back here. Oh, hold on. Belly breathing is the equivalent of this, all right? So that's the secret weapon. So we're going to try this again. I want you to put your hand back on your hand and belly in your chest. And this time I want you to concentrate and try and get the air to go down into the bottom of your lungs. So you want to know the easiest way to do this is that when you take a breath, instead of sucking in your gut, actually extend it out. So you want to make your pants feel a little tighter, all right? So we're going to do the same count. We're going to go on 1, 2, 3, breathe. All right, we're going to try this one more time. Just want to concentrate. And if you don't get it, don't give up. It's just something to work on. All right, 1, 2, 3, breathe. All right, now here's the thing. Actually, we'll teach kids and in Hopewell Valley doing some mindfulness in the elementary schools and the middle schools. And one of the things they can teach kids is to practice their breathing by putting a stuffed animal there. Now, I have had a few adults do this, and you know what they put there? Not their stuffed animal. But if you have one, that's okay. Their phone. And I believe that there's even an app that you could find that if you put it, as you breathe up and you move it, it measures how far your phone moves. Now, the most important part about this kind of breathing, stress kryptonite, is you got to practice. All right. I honestly was teaching patients before I was even doing it myself. Again, it was do as I say, not as I do kind of thing. But with practice, this has now become my default way. And by the way, we were all born belly breathers. You ever watch a baby when they're sleeping? What moves when they breathe? Yeah, not their chest, it's their bellies. I personally think that we shifted when we wanted our clothes to fit us a little better, but that's no science, just my theory. So anyways, so I have another right tool for you. I actually call this the dump and destroy, all right? Because as the pressure starts to build and build and build and build and build, and again, remember I told you, if it gets up to here and you open your mouth, guess what's coming out? Boop. So dump and destroy is simply this. You take a piece of paper, you write, you don't read what it is that you wrote, and then you destroy it. All right. And the reason this becomes important is because when you're writing, you're actually dumping it. But when you're reading it, you're actually reloading it. And so that's the idea. Very different than journaling. Journaling, you write because you want to read it later on or you want to learn from it. So you write in a journal with the intent of going back to read it. Dump and destroy is a completely different tool. And you can do both, honestly. Now, one of the things you can do is you can also have some fun with it and create a dump box. I, since my cancer started, have been, I went to Michael's. I bought just one of those little wooden boxes that has a little latch on it. I only bought it for $2.99. And I have my own dump box right here. And what I do is when I'm done writing, I just fold my little pieces of paper up in there. You can kind of see them. And then I shred them. But if you don't have a dump box, that's okay too. And you could turn this into a worry box. It could be a God box. It could be any kind of box you want. But here's the other thing. You could also use a shredder, all right? Or you can literally just take a piece of paper and destroy it that way. But again, the most important part is that you write, but you don't read it, all right? Now, I have a little twist on this, all right? I call it the disappearing dump because maybe, you know, you don't want coworkers when you get back to work or family members to read or try to think they're going to read. And the truth, so, okay, so let me tell you the tool and then I'll tell you how I came up with it, all right? So here's what you do. You take some toilet paper and a Sharpie and you write on the toilet paper and then you flush it. And there's two things I can promise you. One, nobody will ever read what it is that you just wrote, all right? And two, it creates the great visual because see, thoughts are going to come back into our mind, all right? Things that are stressing us out, they're going to try and pop back into your mind and they will come back to your mind. But here's the thing. The reason I love the dump box and the toilet is because when it pops back into my head, I can picture this instead. And an image will always override a thought. And so the toilet makes a great brrr, because you even have the sound that goes along with it. So here's the true story how I came up with this. So we're working at Capitol Health in a partial hospital program called Milestones. And I remember having a gentleman who was in transitional housing. It was at Escher. And he had roommates, and he'd never had roommates before in his whole entire life. And so this stressed him out. And you know what happened when his stress levels started to go? He would get angry. And as it built and built and built, well, it got to the point where he was yelling and cursing, and honestly, he was about to get kicked out. And I said to him, why don't you take, instead of it coming out of your mouth, put it on the paper and then destroy it? And he said, Carol, I'm afraid they're going to read what it is that I wrote. And I was thinking, okay, quick. And I had a Sharpie on my desk. And so I grabbed it and I just said, here, go into the bathroom, dump your anger on the toilet paper, and then flush it. I said, nobody will ever be able to read it. And you know what? It worked for him, because he was able to take that anger that was building, which for him was the big stress response, and by dumping it, getting it to go back down here. All right. It didn't go completely away, but it didn't come out of his mouth either. So hopefully that makes sense. Now, there's a couple important points. One, you must use paper. All right. You cannot use your phone. You cannot use your computer. You cannot use your iPad. It has to be paper. You can use anything to write with. In fact, I have a couple pictures from my girlfriend. I had taught her this technique. And so she wasn't big on words. She really wasn't interested in writing her feelings, but she could take markers and just scribble them. So whatever you want to use, let it out. But the trick is, don't read if you write stuff, and you might need to repeat it. So here's how you can use this for sleep at night. If you're having a hard time because your mind is racing, and it could be, honestly, your mind could be racing because it's a little bit more of the symptoms that you're experiencing, or it's more stress related. Honestly, the same tool works the same way. So here's how you use this tool. You can't use it in the same room you sleep in, all right? So if I lay down to go to bed at night, and let's say I fall asleep, but I wake up in the middle of the night and then I'm stressing, my mind is off to the races. I'll get up, get out of bed and go into the kitchen. And I have the stove light on. I take a little piece of paper, or sometimes I got to come in my office and I will turn the light on, grab a piece of paper, just write. And you could start out by saying, Carol told me to do this. I don't know what the heck she means, and just whatever, but don't read it. And then go back and lay down. All right. And if there's a lot there, like let's say it's up to here, maybe the first dump, you only get it down to here. Then it takes another one, you get it down to here, and then it takes another one, you get down to here, and you can finally be able to go to sleep. But the secret is you can't do it in the same room. That it will not work like if you step into the other room. All right. Oh, and by the way, here's the other really important thing to do if you wake up with sleep or you're having a hard time falling asleep. Do not look at the clock, because the split second your brain sees what time it is, your brain is going to be more stressed. And what's going to happen? You're not going to be able to fall back asleep. So either cover it up, turn your clock around. I actually put my phone upside down so that I don't know what time it is, but the alarm goes off. And that's really, it becomes a really great tool to do. All right. Let me see, how are we doing on time? All right, I got to tell you this quick story. So not on the same trip to Half Dome, but on the summer, I think 1 summer, 2 summers after we went back, I was back at Bass Lake for vacation, staying in a house with my sister and my nieces. And my nieces were supposed to take care of the food. The adults took care of the expensive part, which was the house rental at the lake. The kids were supposed to divvy up the food. And so I remember my niece coming to me one evening and saying, Aunt Carol, there'd be $300. And I'm like, $300? She's like, yeah, that's your part of the food. And I was like, wait a minute. I'm thinking to myself, I didn't say anything to her. I say, that's not right. I'm not supposed to be paying money for food. So my sister had actually was not around that evening. I don't know what happened to her, but I remember going to bed and thinking to myself, okay, I'll talk to Wendy about it, tomorrow. And I went to go and lay down in bed, and guess what kept popping into my head? $300. Like $300. Like, It wouldn't stop. So here's what I did. I went up, I got up, and you have to be careful because people were sleeping all over the house, like even in the living room. So I snuck into the kitchen, found a little pencil, a little piece of paper. All I wrote was $300 on it. And then what I did is I put it in the book that I took with me to read on vacation. And sure enough, when I put my head on the pillow, guess what tried to pop back into my head? $300. But instead, I pictured the cover of the book. So I had the image override the thought. And so that's how I know it works. All right. Promise me, give it a try. Now, another tool is, I like to say, this is the easiest way to say no without saying N or O. All right. Because for some people, this creates stress, having to say no. And there are some people that might be on this program with us that, guess what? You can't say no. So therefore you have more stress in your life because you can't say no. So this is one of the quickest tools I used to teach my patients. Are you ready? All right, here's the secret. I'll get back to you. That's all you say. I'll get back to you. And if they keep asking, you say, I'll get back to you. I said, I'll get back to you. Now, what's really important about this is two things. One, it doesn't have an N or an O in there, so it makes it easier to come out of our mouths. Two, it doesn't say no and it doesn't say yes. So will somebody come back to you? Yes, they probably will. But here's the secret. You didn't say yes in the moment. And if you're somebody that has a hard time saying no, then this becomes a great tool for you, all right? The important point here too, though, is you've got to practice that so it comes out, you know, so it becomes automatic. It's like we're building a new habit, all right? And then I got one more tool for you. And this is the same tool that President Kennedy used when he was in the White House, and it's not Marilyn Monroe. I have to be careful because you know what? There are some millennials who don't get this. But the tool that he used in the White House was a rocking chair. So it was probably about 4 or 5 years ago. I listened to a program by a gentleman by the name of Dr. Nick Hall. He is a psychoneuroimmunologist. He was the first NIH researcher that proved that guided imagery had a positive impact on outcomes with breast cancer. All right. And so on his program I was listening to of his, he talked about a rocking chair. And he talked about how when you're moving in a rocking chair, your brain is moving in these certain degrees, right? If it's, you know, like 20 degrees or something like that. He said, and it creates a physiological response, meaning it goes, boop, it goes to the hardwiring. He said, which is why babies, when you're rocking a baby, will most likely fall asleep unless they have really significant health issues or colicky, right? And I thought about it, and I had my Uncle Tony. Now, when I moved to New Jersey back in 1987, it was to come take care of my mom. And my Uncle Tony, her brother, lived in a group home. So we would go and take him out to Larry's Diner down in Vineland, New Jersey, and for a good burger. And we would get out, and my Uncle Tony, he was really tall. I mean, he had to be about 6'4", and he would start doing his rocking. And my mom would turn around and say, Tony, stop it, you know, and he'd stop for a minute. And then, of course, as soon as she turned back around, he'd start doing it again. But it suddenly, I had this aha moment, you know, that he was doing that because it was calming for him. Now, I get it that, you know, that's why I have behaviors and behavior plans, because there's a time and a place for that. But think about where you've seen rocking chairs, right? Airports now, well, Philadelphia has some, depending on the terminal you're in. Charlotte does, definitely. We put them into the hospital. They are on porches of restaurants. They get super busy. And here's the other really interesting thing. I actually had a law firm, a big law firm I was doing some work with, consulting and doing some training. And when they found out about the rocking chairs, they actually went and bought 2 rocking chairs and put them in their break room. And so this way staff could just go in and take a quick moment to do that. Now, if you don't have a rocking chair, you can still rock as long as you don't care what people are staring at you. I have been known to be standing in a long line, a bunch of people, and feel my anxiety, just the stress build, and then just start doing a little bit of rocking so that I could trigger that physiological response, all right? So we have stress kryptonite, we got dump and destroy, we got saying no, and we have the rocking chair as part of the right tools. So the 3 steps, just to review them, you want to stop using the wrong tools, you want to become a stress detective, and you want to start using the right tools. Now this, if you got any questions, go ahead and put them down in that little Q&A thing. And you can ask them, and I'll get to them at the end, all right? But that lets us go to 60-second solutions and how they work. So what I want to do is I want to come back to this bottle, right? And I don't know if you could see it. There's still a little foam there. But again, we talked about how the pressure builds up inside, right? I shook this bottle, all right, earlier. And the thing was, is that the pressure I put in then didn't go anywhere. And there's 2 points I want to make. One, it doesn't go anywhere on its own. The pressure stays there until we actually do something to release it, all right? And it's the same way with stress. The stress starts to build up and the pressure builds up and it builds up and it builds up inside of you. If you stop it, right, it doesn't go anywhere until you do something about it. And that's what I discovered when I discovered stressometry, is that it's not enough just to listen to calming music. Calming music only works to one part. We got to have an intervention to use to get it to go back down. Now, what's the safest way to let the pressure out of a bottle? No. In case you're saying slowly, it's not slow. It's actually a little at a time, like this. Let me see if I can get some good pressure. So hopefully you could hear. And that's the safest way. That's how you prevent a mess from happening. It's the same way when it comes to stress. We want to let a little bit out at a time so that this way we're not having to deal with it all spilling out at once either, all right? And if you can only do 30 seconds, 30 seconds is better than none, because if you just go rather than guess what? You're still letting the level go lower and lower, all right? So here's the secret weapon to making this all work. I call it the do 60 system. And here's what it means, is that you got to do step 1 is you want to stop the level from rising by doing something passive, all right? Or think of a tub. You got to shut the water off so that it doesn't overflow. That is followed up by step 2, which is to release or dump so that the level goes back down. And that has to be active. So that you got the tub, you've let the water out, because guess what? It's probably going to fill back up again, all right? So here's the difference. Stopping is what I call passive or calming. Releasing or dumping is called active. And here's what I mean. If you look at this list, right, everything on this list does not require energy or muscles to really do, right? I mean, now you might say, oh, Carol, you got to use eye muscles, but listen, they're really little teeny ones, and so they wouldn't create much of a release if they did at all. The trick is to find what works for you, because not the same thing on here is going to work for everybody. It's finding what works for you and doing it. Then you look at the active list and you'll see that this list requires energy. It requires that you use muscles in order to do these things. It requires muscles for me to open this bottle. So you have to do the 2. Now, if you're somebody who regularly exercises and you miss a day, I would bet $100 that you feel weird the days that you miss, that your day is off a little bit. And that's because when we do exercise as part of our day, all right, it's our built-in stress release. So that when you don't do it, it means you haven't released some of the pressure that you otherwise would have. Um, and you're going to see on there cleaning. Here's the thing. Cleaning is not one of mine. If I have to clean, it stresses me out. So it's not something I'm going to do as a release. But can I tell you one thing that's active that I don't have on this list? Untangling jewelry. Yep. I actually have been given bundles of jewelry that have been tangled together, and just having to use my hands and do that. And the other wonderful thing is weeding, being out in the yard and actually just pulling weeds. Here's the thing, you know it works for you when you lose track of time. All right. So if you're doing something and you lose track of the time of it, you know that it's really a good tool for you. All right. Now, the critical step here is that you got to do step 1, but you also then have to follow it up with step 2. You can't just do step 1. So if I go back and I look at this, if I just would go in my office and I would listen to my music, guess what? I would have still ended up with a migraine, all right? Because I stopped the level from rising, but I did nothing to release it. Because as I went through my day, guess what happened? It went back up again. So it's this constant sort of movement that we kind of got to be ready for. That's why you got to do step 1 and you got to do step 2, and you got to do them in that order, right? You want to stop the level from rising before you go to try and dump any of it out. Otherwise, it won't work. So here's the thing. You always want to have 3 to stop that you could do anytime, anywhere. And for me, these are the 3 that I always can have access to. My breath, I could be doing that right now, and you guys wouldn't even know it. Self-talk. Self-talk is when your brain is screaming at you. Just today, I was going somewhere in the car, and my brain started saying to me, you're going to be late, you're going to be late, you're going to be late. And I had to just say to myself, I have all the time that I need. You know, I'll get there when I get there. And so what we're doing is, if you think about it as a seesaw, right, is you have this negative and then we kind of cancel it out with the positive. And then the last thing for me is a serenity prayer. But it could just be any prayer maybe for you. So you want to pick out which 3 you want. The other thing is you want to have your quick 3 to release. So these are 3 that I can always do. So here's the thing, even if I can't walk somewhere, if I'm sitting in a staff meeting, I could always pick up my feet and move them under the table and nobody's going to ever know. So if I'm in a staff meeting and I'm starting to get really stressed out, let's say at work, and I feel that level just starting to build because I've become a good detective, what I could do is take a few breaths, right? Nobody has to know I'm doing it. And then it could be my walking. And I could just do this. Or if I happen to have a notepad, I could just take and scribble and let it out. But I got to do the stop before I do the release. Otherwise, it'd be like, trying to shake, this bottle's being shook up and we're trying to open it while we're shaking it. We can't. We got to stop first and then release. All right. And just to remind you, you write, you don't read, and then you destroy it. So I wanted to share with you the 5 tools that I've used every day, or pretty much, that's my goal, since my cancer diagnosis. I use them whether I think I need them or not, all right? First one is exercise. Now, doesn't mean that I keep doing the same amount of it. Normally there's a few days after my chemo where the booster shot they give me kind of knocks me on my butt. So if I go up on my treadmill and I only do 2 minutes walking very slow, that's okay. But I did a little, all right? Second one I use is my punching bag. And again, I use that every day, maybe just a little, maybe a little more. Doesn't matter, but even if I just did 10 punches, I let it out. The other one is meditation. And I actually started out with just 1 minute a day. And I'm going to come back to this because I want to teach you all how you could start meditating. And it's much more simple than what you think. All right. And then I do my laughter yoga. Now, if you don't know what laughter yoga is, and it's kind of, oh, this is kind of bad because I was talking to Janet about starting a laughter yoga club at NAMI Mercer. And then, of course, my health kind of went like this. But YouTube, all right, YouTube it so you will see. But we all know laughter is the best medicine. So what I do is I take a ride in my car and I do what I call a laughter meditation. And all it is that I am laughing intentionally. I started with 1 minute, but nowadays I actually try to do 20. And here's what it do. I just go like this. That's it. Now, the marvelous thing is that my body doesn't mind if I'm making myself laugh intentionally or not, but I'm still getting the benefits from it, all right? And then I do a dump and destroy every day. Now, I've gotten better. Like, there are days that I might have missed a two, but at least if I have five that I'm aiming for, if I miss one, I still have the other four. So here's a tool I came up with to help me keep track. So you can see in February, there's some holes there. I actually was really good except for my laughter. And the reason is because my sister came on January. I had my first chemo on January 30th, and she was out here with me for almost 2 weeks. And so when I went for a ride in the car, she was always with me. And so I missed that, I really missed doing that. But here's March. And the goal was, again, just to do something, even if it's 1 minute, if it's 2 minutes, if it's 30 seconds, because here's the thing, you build that habit, all right? And it's not about, kind of perfection. For me, this was just holding me accountable and helping me just, all right, did I do it? Did I do it today? Okay, I got to do this today. So it's just, I created it in a Word document. So, okay, wait a minute. I want to go back because I want to come back here to meditation. All right. So I probably learned to meditate. Maybe now it was like 4 years ago, 5 years ago. I lose track of time. But I learned from a woman who passed away about 3 years ago, Ane Trime. She was an American-born Tibetan Buddhist nun and ran the Princeton Meditation Center. And, I went with a girlfriend because she was going there, and Trime had me. She said, when most people think meditation is make your mind be quiet, she said, you know what? No, that's not it at all. She says, there's 4,000 kinds of meditation, but I'm going to give you my simple instructions. She said, all right, all you have to do is sit down and shut up. And I thought, I could do that, because here I thought I had to make my mind be quiet. So here's what she taught me. She said, when you breathe in, she said, all you want to do is think, my mind is calm. And when you exhale, she said, you just want to think, my body's relaxed. And so what I want to do is I got my stopwatch right here. Well, let me open up my thing. I want to just get you guys to do this for 30 seconds, okay? If it's safe, you can do it for 30. And so what I want to do is we're going to start, all right? And we'll do for 30 seconds. And then when it's time, the 30 seconds is up, I'll give you my little bell, okay? So get comfortable, eyes open, eyes closed. It's up to you, all right? So as you breathe in, think, my mind is calm. As you exhale, my body's relaxed. In, my mind is calm. Out, my body's relaxed. In, my mind is calm. Out, my body relaxed. pretty simple. So I started off doing 1 minute a day. That was it. You know, and after 2 weeks of doing meditation, my dog got out. Now I live in the boondocks of the Sourland Mountains, and at 9 o'clock at night, I normally would have been freaking out when she got loose. I was eerily calm, and that's when I knew this meditation stuff worked. I'd only been doing 1 minute for 2 weeks. So I promise you, if you could be consistent, that's it, you know. Or if you don't like that, all you could do is count your breaths. So as you breathe in and breathe out, that's 1. Inhale, exhale. I'll call them mind push-ups. When I teach the kids, I tell them to do some mind push-ups. And the mind push-ups are just the in and out and counting them. So, that I told you about this tool. So let's just take a recap, all right, and see what we talked about so far. I shared with you why stress management won't work, because we need to address both sides of stress, the prevention and the intervention, being able to do something in the moment right now. The 3 steps: you got to stop using the wrong tools, become a stress detective, and start using the right tools in place. We looked at the impact and how that stress is affecting you. Then we looked at the right tools, and you have the stress kryptonite, you got dump and destroy, you got I'll get back to you, and a rocking or rocket gel. And then we took a look at the do 60 system, that you have to do step 1 and step 2. Step 1 is doing something passive to stop the level from rising. And then step 2 is doing something active to get the level to drop. All right. And I have a surprise for you. When I wrote my last series of books called the Guide Series to Less Stress, there's the Bride's Guide, there's the Caregiver's Guide to Less Stress. There were actually 4 or 5 that I was able to get done before I had to focus on my health. I came up with a fast start training program so that I could just help people take what they were reading and kind of put it more into practice. So if you were somebody who is interested in wanting some more tools, all right, this is what it is. And it's basically 2 modules out of a big stress program that I did a year ago. And in the first module, it's all video based. It helps you identify where your stress is, what are your bullseyes and how to protect them. And then it gives you an ultimate stress tool. And then a little bit about 2 was we look at how you can avoid overload, why walking away doesn't work, what stress quakes are, and then we look at your skills. Now, the cool part about it is you can watch it on any device. If you sign up for it, you can watch it on your phone, your iPad, your computer. You got to have access to the internet for that. And you can sign up for it. It's free. Those 2 modules. And you would just go to stressyou.university.com, and then it's stress-tools/sign-up. I wanted to show you, so when you go to the website, this is what it would look like. So it would be where you put in your name and your email, and then it'll tell you, okay, check your email because this is coming. And then you get an email. And if you click that red button, it takes you to module 1. And so module 1 is broken down. The videos are really short, so you can watch them in no more than 10-minute segments. And then if you click on it, this is what you'll see. There's module 1, session 3, and then there's some worksheets that you can actually download. This is an example of the 1 worksheet where it's just helping you become a better stress detective. So again, you can sign up for those, and this will be in the replay. So if you don't happen to get it all jotted down, that you can. So I wanted to, with that being said, open this up to questions and comments. Somebody here asked, where can we find guided imagery? Well, that is great because I found there's 2 ways. You could get some free guided imagery on the internet, all right? That could be YouTube even, just doing a YouTube search. Or there's a couple resources that I bought and I invested in when I was getting ready for surgery. And one is Hay House, which Louise Hay, they've done some, Hay House has a lot of resources. And then Health Pathways, Bella Ruth is her name, Bell, Aruth. She is somebody who has done for decades and decades and decades kind of guided imagery programs specifically for different things. And so you got both. You could find guided imagery. You could find a lot of it on the internet, just doing a Google search or YouTube search, or even finding a couple programs that might specifically address what it is that you want to do. So thank you for asking that question. Is there anybody else who maybe has a question? And honestly, we got a small group, so if you want to, you could raise your hands and I can unmute you if you want to answer it or ask it. And I make sure. Thank you. Somebody said they really enjoyed the webinar. So know that it will come out. It will come out as, you know, a recording. So you'll get an email that actually has the link in there. And so that way you can, you know, share it with families and friends and anybody else. Oh, thank you. Glad you thought it was excellent. You know, I'm so excited to be here with you because this is kind of like the first that I've gotten to really get back to doing what I love to do, and that is sharing the tools. So, all right, so we got a question here. It says, can I further clarify kryptonite breathing? Is the purpose to stomach breathe? Yes. The purpose is to get the air into the bottom of your lungs so that you're getting more, which is why you call it stomach breathing, but you really are pushing the air down into the bottom of your lungs so that you're getting more oxygen to your brain. And again, it's, if you have anxiety and panic, it goes the opposite. You really have to teach. Now, let me tell you a really quick breathing tool that can also help in case you have anxiety or panic. They call it square breathing. And basically all it is that you do a breath in and you count to 4 in your head. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you pause and count in your head 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you exhale, count in your head 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you pause and you count 1, 2, 3, 4. And so you can see by the 4s, you've created a square. And the reason that works really good is because instead of your mind racing with anxiety or panic, it's having to concentrate on the numbers. And then while you're practicing getting some oxygen into your system there. So hopefully that, yep, that's it exactly. So, oh, thanks, Barbara. Glad you liked it. Yeah, thanks you guys for the comments, the feedbacks. Now, there's one last thing I just wanted to give you, and oh, where'd it go? That's this. If you got any questions or anything comes up, you can always reach me at this email address, and I, you know, be glad to be of any kind of help that I could be. All right. So let's see, let's make sure we don't have any others. And yeah. Great, thanks you guys for all coming. So nobody's got any other questions. We'll just call this baby a wrap, and we'll go from there. Yes. All right, you guys, have a safe night. Stay healthy and well, all right? Bye-bye.